All right, this is the third time that I've tried this, so hopefully this will work. Happy Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. Hopefully you can get on your Disney Plus and binge watch 9 shows, 9 movies. Maybe not. But if you've never seen it, it'd be worth taking a watch. They're fun to watch. Me and the kids love to watch the animated series, the Rebels and the Clone Wars and all that. But anyway, that's not what we're about here today. We're going to be getting into a lesson on how the provision of peace, teens. We need peace. You need peace. Everybody needs peace. There's a lot of crazy chaos out there. And you know what? In the midst of all this chaos, I still have peace. I know who holds my tomorrow, my today. And so we're going to be talking about some miracles. That's a doctrine thing today that we're going to be covering, and how, there's certain things that's happened throughout history that can only be explained by God. He's actually going to defy the laws of nature, if you want to say, in how the sun is going to stay put. And this doesn't break science, okay? So don't cast it out and say, well, I believe in science, and so this doesn't make sense. This does not break science in the sense of the sun stood still. The earth does rotate, but it's our perspective on how we see the sun. We see the sun set, sun rise. We see the sun moving. Doesn't mean that the sun is moving, since it's the center. The earth is the one moving, but that's our perspective. So as you see that, don't cast out the Bible just because, well, the sun stood still. Science says this doesn't happen. Well, this is a miracle God does here. All right, so God fights for his people to provide the victory here in Joshua chapter 10. So if you want to turn over there, you can. Joshua chapter 10, we'll look at the scripture here together. But, Israel is no stranger to war. They have defeated the Amalekites. They will continue to have war. They've dealt with Jericho. God did most of that. And then they went on to Ai, and they lost the first time because somebody had sinned, and they had to take care of that person and his family before they could defeat Ai. And in the midst of all of this, you find out that disobedience brings defeat and obedience brings victory. And it's so very important for us. Why does God want to teach us this lesson? It's because we need to be following after him. It's our dependence, our reliance on him, not self-reliance, not our own way that gets us through life. It's through God's way. And God wanted them to do exactly as he stated. They disobeyed, so they failed. And so this is what we need to focus on here. To start out, obedience brings victory. But as they went on, there was a civilization named Gibeon, and not Gideon, Gibeon, that they had warriors. They had a fortified city, but they heard what Israel had done, and they were scared. So they deceived Israel, showed up, and said, hey, can we be your servants? Can we make peace? Joshua didn't consult God in this situation, and he ended up making peace because he felt sorry for them. They deceived them. And can you imagine Joshua could have made some issues here and said, no, you lied to me. I won't do that. I won't commit to this. But yet they fulfilled their promises. And so all of a sudden they get into Joshua chapter 10 and verses 1 through 8. I'm going to read that for you. Now it came to pass when Adonizedek, good luck pronouncing that, king of Jerusalem, had heard how Joshua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed it as he had done to Jericho and her king. So he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them. That they feared greatly because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. Wherefore that same guy, king of Jerusalem, sent unto Hoham, king of Hebron, and unto Piram, king of Jarmuth, and unto Japhia, king of Lachish, and unto Debir, king of Eglon, saying, hey, by the way, if I mispronounce that, sorry. I'm just not a good pronouncer with all these Old Testament names, all right? But it says, Come up unto me and help me, that we may smite Gibeon, for it hath made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. Therefore the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, and the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, gathered themselves together and went up, they and all their hosts, and encamped before Gibeon, and made war against it. And the men of Gibeon sent unto Joshua the camp to Gilgal, saying, Slack not thy hand from thy servants, come up to us quickly, and save us, and help us, for all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. So Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said unto Joshua, Fear them not, for I have delivered them unto thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee. And so what's going on here is that there's 5 kings that end up forming alliance against Israel, against Gibeon, and they're scared. They don't like God. They don't worship him. And yet they form this alliance. These Amorites form this alliance to attack Gibeon. Gibeon formed up an alliance with Israel, so they're going to attack them. They might as well have victory over them and see where they can go from there, right? And so these 5 kings attack. Gibeon hears about it, sends messengers to Joshua, says, Hey, we're your servants. Please come and save us. You know what? Joshua at that moment could have excused himself out and said, Hey, listen, this is my way out of this. This is my excuse. They deceived us. I'm just going to let them go and let them be taken out. But he doesn't, because he honors his promises, because that's the honorable thing to do. That's the godly thing to do, is to honor your promises. You know, how many times do we excuse ourselves out of things today that we think, we could just get away with it? But it's not right. It doesn't honor God. You know, one thing, and this you could say is totally different circumstances. A lighter thing, it's not that big of a deal. But you know what? In dealing with schoolwork, you say, well, it doesn't count anyway. Why should I do it? What does God want you to do? To be honorable. You know what? You've committed to this and what you need to learn. And no, I don't think that you're going to use everything, but you might use part of it, okay? We're not getting into that debate, but you've been asked to do work. And that's what you need to do as a student to be the best student possible at your school, to do the best that you can possibly do in the midst of this time. And sometimes we excuse it out, well, they're not going to count it anyway, so why? Why even do the work? Because you're a follower of God. You want to honor him. You want to shed some light in the midst of this darkness when nobody else cares, no other student cares. Be the difference. Be the difference. That's just one thing in the midst of a whole bunch of other circumstances that could be happening. Well, what does it matter? Nobody else is doing it. Nobody else cares. So they didn't excuse themselves out. Joshua heads out with his army to go and to protect Gibeon. And you know what? God instructs Joshua, don't be afraid. I'll be with you. I'll take them out. Not one of them will be able to stand against you. The victory is provided in its entirety by God himself. Joshua chapter 10 verse 9, it says, Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly and went up from Gilgal all night. So he actually, with all of his army, went all night to attack, to surprise. And the Lord discomfited them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them along the way that goeth up to Bethhoron, and smote them to Azekah and unto Makkedah. You're saying, what's happening? Well, they surprised them. God confused them. There was a great slaughter. Israel's whooping butt here because God's making the way. In verse 11, it came to pass as they fled from before Israel and were in the going down to Bethhoron, that the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Azekah, and they died. They were much more died with hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. So all of a sudden, God rains down hailstones and kills a bunch of them, so much so that it's more than what Israel has already slain during this whole entire battle. Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said, In the sight of Israel's sons, stand thou still unto Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed, until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and hasted not to go down about a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it. And the Lord hearkened unto the voice of a man, for the Lord fought for Israel. And Joshua returned, and all Israel with him, unto the camp to Gilgal. See, in the midst of all this, God would be glorified in the midst of this deception that Gibeon did, which means that, God can use some of our bad decisions, our bad choices, our mistakes, and still be glorified through them. So we don't mess up God's plans, which is awesome. It gives me more comfort. How much comfort does it give you that we can't mess up God's plans? But as we're getting to this, there's surprise, there's confusion, there's hail, and the daylight's almost gone, and Joshua wants to finish this battle. So what does he do? He does what everybody needs to do when they need help. He prays, God, would you have the sun to stand still and the moon to stand still over there, okay? To where we would have the light that's needed. Now, if you're Israel, you're thinking, man, I'm already tired. I marched all night long. We fought all day long. What else? But yet, God answered it, and God gave them the strength. They pushed through. They pushed through. And God fulfilled his promises. Joshua was relying on the promise that God was going to give them the victory. How many promises or what promises do you rely on so you could be brave, so you can send up a prayer, so you can talk with God and ask him for help? Why do you push forward in life? What are the things that you're holding on to? And what type of Joshua-type prayer do you need today? Sometimes when we're desperate, we know we need a little bit more gas in the tank, we need to pray. God does give peace. God gives victory. How so? The Christ connection is that Christ came to provide victory over sin and death and to provide peace. When Joshua conquers the land, there's peace for several years. God gave that. God does the work. We don't have to work for it. God did it by sending his son to die for us. The payment has been made. His wrath has been appeased. Okay? This is what we need. Jesus Christ. He provides the victory. Have you been saved? Have you trusted in that salvation? I hope you enjoy that lesson here today. And God makes the sun to stand still. He made it happen so that they could have the time to be able to finish the job that he told them that they would need to do. He defies what's normal. It says that nothing had happened like that up until then, and nothing has happened since then. Like that day, God provided a miracle for them to finish the job. How good is our God? He's great. He's awesome. He's worthy of our worship. Hope you enjoy that today. You have a great one. May the 4th be with you. And if you don't understand that, watch a Star Wars movie. It's good. But don't miss out on the great blessings of the lesson today. God is a good God. Talk to you later.